Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Matthew Jane, and I am the Learning and Engagement Manager for the State Historical Society of Iowa. The Iowa History 101 webinars, presented on the second and fourth Thursdays of each month, explore Iowa's history from pre-statehood to current day. You can learn more about this series and all of our programs on our website at history.iowa.gov. Please remember to sign up for each webinar you would like to attend, and don't worry if you can't watch live. All presentations will be recorded. Now, a few housekeeping points before I introduce our speaker today. Everyone came into this webinar on mute with cameras off. Closed captions are available by clicking the closed caption button on your screen. The webinar is being recorded and will be placed on the Iowa Culture page of YouTube in just a few days. I have disabled the chat function, but if you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A feature throughout the webinar. My colleague Rachel Hansen is watching that feature. I'll prepare a list of questions for the speaker at the end of the presentation. But please note we may not have time to get to all the questions before we end today. And now I'm pleased to introduce our moderator for today and leader, Hannah Howard. Hannah Howard is the National History Day in Iowa affiliate coordinator, a public historian by training. She is passionate about working with young people to develop historical thinking skills. She has previously worked for the City of Raleigh Historic Resources and Museum Program, the Park City Museum, and Living History Farms. And now I'm happy to turn over to Hannah Howard to begin the webinar.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you everyone for joining us today to chat a little bit about National History Day in Iowa. So how we're going to kind of structure this conversation today is you're going to hear from me talking a little bit about how National History Day works, what the program is, what it teaches, how students participate, how projects get made. And then I'm going to turn it over to the real experts in the room who are our stars of the show. We have a National History Day teacher, student, and judge with us here today. And I will introduce them and their many accolades as we get a little bit further into the presentation. But without further ado, we will go ahead and get going. So, National History Day is an academic enrichment program for students in middle school and high school. That one is firing on all cylinders, uh, encourages students to become historians through engaging through original research and developing projects about kind of topics of passion that fall within an annual theme. And we're going to talk about each of those pieces as we go. But first, I would like to kind of showcase what I think the three biggest strengths of this program are, our program essentials. First and foremost, students engage in and learn historical research and analysis. So students are responsible for conducting their own historical research using primary and secondary sources, and then synthesizing those sources to create a historical argument with supporting points. This is kind of high-level research and engagement at the classroom or extracurricular level. The students in this program are usually fairly high achieving. And that project development, that second bullet point there, is kind of what results from their historical research and analysis. We'll talk a little bit more about projects in just a second, but I would also like to highlight that National History Day teaches what I like to call 21st century skills. Students in this program are working with digital humanities tools through researching through institutions like the Library of Congress, the National Archives. They're also learning to work in teams meaningfully, both in person and virtually, depending on how their project ends up shaking out. They develop things like public speaking skills, critical thinking, time management, anything that you need to be ready for a career or for college, kind of once your time in school ends. And just to kind of showcase a little bit of what this program can look like. Over on the left-hand side of the screen, we have a photo of two of our students from 2023 in their exhibit project, the APGAR score, Advancing the Frontier of Neonatal Medicine. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about projects in just a minute, but just to give you a preview of what some of this looks like in practice. Let's talk for just a moment about student participation in this program. I mentioned it is for middle and high school students. Those students are broken down into age divisions. We have our youth, junior, and senior, and you might be saying, wait a minute, youth is not middle school or high school, because according to this slide, it is grades 4 through 5. We do have a youth division here in Iowa that showcases projects created by elementary school age students. This is mostly a non-competitive division. They are really just getting their feet wet and starting to learn some of those historical thinking and writing skills so that they will hopefully be inspired to pursue National History Day in the future. But for our purposes today, we are focusing on our junior divisions and our senior divisions. Junior division is middle school, grades 6 through 8. Senior division is grades 9 through 12, so more like high school. Students can choose to participate in National History Day in groups or individual. If you're participating individually, then obviously it is just you. If you're participating in a group, that means you are working with 2 to 5 students. So here on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see this is a full group of 5 from Akron Westfield Middle School performing their project Annie Wittenmeyer, leading a frontier in hospital safety conditions at the 2023 National History Day National Contest. I'm sure that our two of our, well, actually all three of our panelists can speak to the strengths of working in a group versus working individually. We'll hear a little bit more about what that looks like in practice. So now on these past 2 slides, you've seen 2 kinds of projects, an exhibit and a performance, but there are 5 project categories students can choose to create in National History Day. Those projects are documentary, exhibit, paper, performance, and website. Each category offers kind of a different learning experience for students depending on what their strengths are or what they'd prefer to get better at. And in theory, the student's topic that they choose, which again, we'll talk about in a little bit once we get into the discussion with our panelists, should guide the project category they choose. A little bit about each. A documentary is a 10-minute audiovisual presentation of the student's research and conclusions, very much like a small-scale History Channel production is what we kind of compare it to. An exhibit is a small scale, think of like an exhibit at a museum, kind of covering the student's analysis, thesis, etc. This often takes the form of a trifold board, but it doesn't have to. Last year, in the year of Barbenheimer, we saw many Barbie projects. I had a dream house, and it was awesome. Paper is probably our most traditional category where a student writes a long form essay about their topic. A performance is a 10-minute dramatic experience wherein students design costumes, a script to convey their historical argument, and then a website kind of strikes the sweet spot between a paper and an exhibit because it allows for both text and visual elements for the student. You can see here, paper students don't always get a lot of love, but we have this really great photo of a paper student talking with judges about her paper, I'd Rather Walk, the evolution of the Montgomery bus boycott at the 2023 National History Day in Iowa State Contest. So we've talked about participation, we've talked about project categories, but one important thing that everyone who participates in National History Day has to keep in mind is our annual theme. The annual theme is released by the National History Day National Office, headquartered in College Park, Maryland, every year, and it's designed to kind of provide a level playing field for all students. So you don't have students engaging with different kind of big ideas. It's designed to provide a framework so that everyone is kind of on the same page. The annual theme is chosen to be fairly broad. In the past, we've had themes like debate and diplomacy in history, frontiers in history, turning points in history. This year, our theme is rights and responsibilities in history. So this theme will help students guide their topic selection as they choose what it is they want to research throughout the course of the year. For rights and responsibilities, we're concerned with both. That and in there is very important. So if a student begins thinking about what kind of rights they're interested in exploring in the past, whether they're civil, political, economic, human, whatever it might be, they have to pair it somehow with a responsibility. That relationship between the two has to be considered. It can't be one or the other. And we were chatting briefly before this webinar. That has proved to be a little challenging for some students this year, but I have every confidence that Iowa students will be able to rise to the challenge. So this is clearly kind of a project-based learning initiative that happens in classrooms throughout the state. And for some folks, that's where it ends. However, for some, that is not necessarily where it ends. So everybody begins at the same point. Students begin with research once they've chosen that topic in accordance with the annual theme. They are tasked with finding primary and secondary sources to help them better understand their topic. Once they have gathered primary and secondary sources, they start to form an argument about the topic's significance in history, kind of providing some points of analysis to strengthen that claim. Once that piece is at least underway, I never want to say finished because I don't actually know that a History Day project is ever truly finished. I think always a work in progress. They begin developing projects to share their conclusions and support with those pieces of evidence they found through primary and secondary sources. And again, sometimes that's the end of the line, but we are gearing up for our contest season here at National History Day in Iowa. And so students can participate in a series of contests that begin at a very local level, ranging all the way to the national level. And this is a little sneak peek at what that process looks like. Some students begin with a school level contest for our kind of larger programs at the school level. It's necessary to kind of whittle down who's going to go compete at the district or regional level. For example, um, Bettendorf Middle School out in the eastern half of the state hosts a school contest every year just because they have a very large number of students who participate in NHD. Once your school contest is finished, you would advance to the district contest or regional contest. These take place in 9 communities throughout the state of Iowa. There is probably one close to you, and we're going to keep that on the back burner because I have a pitch for you at the very end. And once students are finished competing at the regional contest, the top 3 entries advance to the state contest. I should say the top 3 entries in each division and category. So our junior group exhibits, those top 3. Our senior individual performances, those top 3, all advance to state. The state contest is usually held in central Iowa. This year it will be at Iowa State, where the top 2 projects in each division and category will then advance to the national contest, which takes place in College Park, Maryland, just outside Washington, D.C. I will say none of these contests are possible without the help of volunteer judges, which both Deb and Renee, who are 2 of our panelists I'll introduce in just a few minutes here, have graciously served as judges in their time with the program. And so we can't do it without them. So hopefully we can hear a little bit more about what that process is like and why it's worth it to get involved. All right, last little bit from me, and then we'll have a better conversation with our panelists. Just want to give y'all an idea of what this program looks like across our state. In 2024, these numbers are all from last year, approximately 2,500 students participated in NHD at the classroom level here in Iowa. So that's, they get classroom instruction, they built a project, maybe the teacher used the framework to kind of help encourage historical thinking skills, which is great. That's awesome. Of those 2,500 students, 1,158 competed at those 9 regional contests across the state last year. From that number, 481 students advanced to the state contest, and of those 481, 66 advanced to the national contest. I am very pleased to share that last year, 35 students received honors at the national contest. That's over half, which is a pretty good batting average, if I do say so myself. We are very, very proud of our kind of small but mighty contingent of Iowa students and the way they perform at every level of the competition. And you can see here on the left side of the screen, this is a group of our national competitors last summer visiting with Senators Grassley and Ernst at the U.S. Capitol during the national contest. That is one of their activities that they do while they're out there. So without further ado, I am going to now kind of transition from my little spiel into a much more interesting conversation with our 3 panelists. We are lucky to have 3 experts on the panel with us today. The first is Deb Masker. Deb Masker is a former teacher at Council Bluffs Schools, although she still volunteers at Gerald Cronin Middle School and Abraham Lincoln High School. A History Day teacher for 35 years, she was a finalist for the Patricia Bering National History Day Senior Division Teacher of the Year Award, served as a Bering Ambassador for History Day, participated in the 2023 NHD Sacrifice for Freedom in the Pacific Institute, and has judged at History Day contests at the district, state, and national levels. Whew. So not that big a deal, really, at all. All right. Next, we are lucky enough to have one of Deb's students with us. This is Abby Nelson. Abby Nelson is a 9th grader at Council Bluffs Abraham Lincoln High School. In 2023, she received 3rd place, or the alternate slot, at the NHD and Iowa State contest in the junior group exhibit category with her partner, Adrian Stotts, for their project titled Carver, the Agricultural Pioneer. In 2024, Abby and Adrian won the Iowa History Award at the NHT and Iowa State Contest for their junior group exhibit project titled A Case of Stolen Heritage, Maria Pearson and NAGPRA. So Abby is already a very accomplished student, but coming back to hopefully claim another title this year, which we'll hear more about. Lastly, we have Renee McClendon, who she's listed here as a judge, but also is a teacher of many things. You'll notice as we keep going, there's a lot of crossover between Renee and Deb and their many accomplishments in National History Day. Renee is a former teacher at Akron Westfield Schools. She started their NHD program in 1994, and her students were three-peat state contest champions in 2001, 2002, and 2003. She was the first ever recipient of the NHD and Iowa Outstanding Teacher of the Year Award in 1997. She has judged at regional, state, and the national contest since 2000. In 2008, she began volunteering for NHD in Mississippi, which included a stint as the state coordinator for a time. In 2010, she won the History Channel Volunteer of the Year Award. In 2024 alone, she served as a judge for 20 different NHD contests in 12 different locations. Off the top of her head, she has judged contests in Mississippi, Louisiana, California, Minnesota, South Dakota, Chicago, Iowa, Georgia, New York, Illinois, Nevada, Alaska, and Connecticut. If that was not enough to keep her busy, she is also a part-time choir and show choir piano accompanist for Northview Middle School in Ankeny. So very busy, very accomplished people on this call. Very excited to hear from them as we get going. And so without further ado, we shall. My first question for everyone to chime in as you like is, how did you first become involved with NHD?
Well, I will start. Back in 1990, I was looking for something for the kids in the TAG program at the school where I was the elementary principal and also TAG coordinator, TAG teacher. And one of my contacts at the AEA at Green Hills brought National History Day to my attention, and I have never looked back. That group of students had the best play ever of all of my years. We missed the theme by a mile, but boy, the play was good. So that was how I got started.
So I'm very similar to Deb. I was looking for something for my gifted students in Akron Westfield, and I went to the ITAG conference at UNI, and Kathy Paul spoke about the National History Day program. And Kathy is also a longtime Iowa National History Day person. And I was sold on it, and it was so much effort and hugely challenging for our kids. But eventually it was opened in our school to any students who are interested, and it's still that way. And that school is still very successful, not only at the state level, but also at nationals.
I have always been fascinated with history, and so when I heard that there was a club for it at Kern, I was willing to join and do all the work for it. So I kept sticking through all the hard times. And
So Abby, did you start in 6th grade?
yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, let's jump in a little further. I love that there's this joke about National History Day among many of us, is that once it kind of gets its hooks in you, it never leaves. And I think that's true of everybody on this call, at least our panelists. I think it's true of me as well. So let's kind of break this down into sort of the steps of the process, beginning with research and kind of topic selection. So for my question is first for Deb, and then Renee, please feel free to chime in too as a former teacher. How do you guide students toward finding the right topic? And then how do you guide them toward finding quality resources as they begin that research process?
Well, for the students at Kern and AL, we start in September and our clubs meet after school. High school meets 1 day a week, middle school meets 2 days a week. So the first thing that we do is take apart the theme and try to develop a pretty knowledge level understanding of the theme. And then we go through lists of ideas, and I have old lists that go with different themes that I pull out and add ideas to. Most importantly for me is it's something that they truly want to research, because this is not something you do for a month and quit. This is a long time of research and working. I really push the students, and Abby will agree with that, to do Iowa topics, because first of all, we need to celebrate Iowa history. And second of all, the access to those resources are greater if it is an Iowa topic. So that's where we begin. We take an annual research trip to Iowa State University in October and work with the wonderful people there. We've been doing that for a really long time. And I also work with the students and we identify primary source people or experts in the field, and every student has the opportunity to conduct at least one interview with their project, because there are a lot of great 21st century skills that go with that. So we begin in September. We work through project ideas. Kids have to present 4 to me and then narrow it down to 2. And I am constantly asking them, and how does this match the theme? Abby was probably tired of hearing that from me, because there's no reason to spend all this time and energy if it doesn't match the theme. And so kids have changed ideas. Kids have proven me wrong with things that they've picked when I've looked at them and said, really, you think that matches the theme? So I'm open for most ideas. I just make sure that they have the research and the facts to back it up. Abby, what do you want to add?
You definitely pushed people and making sure that the theme or that our topic matches the theme, definitely. And there's definitely been times where we've had to change ideas in the middle of researching because it didn't match and there weren't enough resources to back up your information.
So what I will add is that I agree with Deb 100% on how important it is for students to be interested in their topic, and that helps the project become more of a labor of love than have it be as difficult as it can be. But from a judge's perspective, I will also add that the very best projects are those that have a narrow focus, but a huge impact. So you want to narrow your focus so that you have enough time in the small amount of time and space given these projects that you can talk about historical context, talk about alternate perspectives. So to me, it's important for a topic to have a small focus, narrow focus, but it also have a huge impact.
Absolutely. I'm going to go back to Abby for a second. Abby, how, as a multi-year participant and award-winning participant in this program, how do you organize your sources and other research materials? And how do you decide which sources are most important when you draft your historical argument and start building your project?
So at our school, we use MyBib, and so we take our topic and then list our topic and then separate it into secondary and primary tabs. And so Miss Masker gives a list of starting sources that we can use, and from there we decide if it's primary or secondary. And we start annotating those, and once it gets closer to contest, we start constructing our project. And it's kind of hard to, with a word count, to stay in the word count. So we have to look through sources that we had to pick the right quotes to use to sum up what we want to say.
It's that important difference between what's nice to know and what you need to know, right? When you're getting down to the wire as you're constructing a project. So let's talk a little bit more about projects. For any of you, really, what are the benefits of offering the 5 project categories for students to choose from? Why is it good to not be locked into one or the other?
Well, I think for me, everybody has their gifts. And the different project areas allow them to be able to use those gifts to the best of their ability. I have a young man that writes a paper every year, and he is not a performer in the sense of, look at me, I want to be a part of performance, because every year I ask him and he just looks at me like, are you serious? But he writes a great paper. And so this paper category fits his personality and fits his skills. Exhibits, that's Abby's thing. She loves putting the exhibits together. And we have analyzed and maybe even argued a little bit on occasion about what should go on the board, what should not go on the board. But that's her gift. She loves that visual presentation. Kaya Schleifman loves the documentary category. And she, I hope, is going to be a filmmaker someday because she has really developed some wonderful skills in that area. That's her thing. I have had kids do performances. I have kids do websites. Every single one of them chooses something that they think will best represent, or that's the best way for them to represent their information. So I think it just allows those kids to be able to use those gifts to the best of their ability. And I did want to say something about the research is I give the kids templates to take notes on. They're the same template every year. I just improve them and put the new theme on them. And that's one way that we help keep them organized as they move through this process.
I would like to add that I think schools now are going to more project-based assessment of learning. In fact, I have a third grade grandson who they had the chance to either take a test over a third grade science unit, or they were able to build a car and show how that car moved forward during their classes. So I think they're moving more towards that. But National History Day has been doing this since 1974, is offering the opportunity to show what you've learned as a gift to students, to do it in however is your favorite way, or however you see your skills as the highest.
All right, Abby, these are some questions for you. So, as Ms. Masker has said, the exhibit category is your thing. What draws you to the exhibit category?
What really draws me to the exhibit category is definitely the creativity that you can display. In 2023 for Frontiers in History, my partner Adrian and we decided to recreate the Jessup wagon, and we put all of his bulletins that he had made, and we put in fake fruit, and it definitely showed the creativity aspect of doing an exhibit.
The 2023 project was the one about George Washington Carver, correct?
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit more about that. So clearly that is a topic that mattered to you. Can you explain a little bit how you chose that topic, what your argument was, if you remember from so many years ago now, and just kind of why that topic stood out to you? And I'm going to ask you to do the same thing for 2024 so you can prepare.
Adrian and we got a list of topics that would fit the theme for this year, and we were definitely having a hard time deciding which topic we wanted to do, and George Washington Carver definitely stood out to us because Peanut Man, when you think of the Peanut Man, you think of George Washington Carver. And so I definitely cannot remember my argument for choosing it.
One of the things that we talked about was, and I think it was Frontiers in History, his approach to helping the farmers in the South recoup the loss from the devastating years of the boll weevil and the over utilization of cotton as a agriculture. And the fact that he attended Iowa State University, and we went to the archives there and were able to get a lot of primary sources, I think really was a benefit to the girls.
Yes.
Absolutely. So last year in 2024, you tackled the not instant, like pretty big topic of Maria Pearson and NAGPRA as legislation. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you chose that topic and what you learned as a result of your research from that?
Going from 2023 to 2024, we were having a shift change in teachers, and our new teacher she is a Native American woman, and so definitely we had like a connection kind of to Native American history. And so we were given the idea of what if we do Maria Pearson and the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act.
Sure. And can you explain a little bit about who Maria Pearson is and how she's connected to Iowa history?
Maria Pearson was a Native American woman whose husband was working on a project down in Glenwood, and when they were digging up like land to expand the highway, they came across old bones, and two of those bones were Native American. And instead of reburying these bones, they sent them to Iowa University to be studied. And so when he came home to tell his wife what had happened, she did not like what they did to those bones, and she the next day went to the state capitol and told the Robert Ray to give her back her people's bones and give them back to their rightful tribe so they can rebury it.
And then eventually the legislation that gets passed at the federal level offers protections for situations like this, when things like that happen, correct?
Correct.
All right.
The legislation started in Iowa, and then she fought to do the national or federal law. So,
yes. Okay. Because I am the National History Day coordinator, I do have some intel on what your project for this year is going to be. And so do you feel comfortable giving us a little bit of a preview what you'll be discussing in this year's exhibit project?
This year's exhibit project is about the Meskwaki settlement in Tama County, Iowa.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Meskwaki settlement?
In July of 1857, the Meskwaki people decided to buy an 80-acre land parcel to continue practicing their culture and heritage and stuff on that land without like having to be moved from it, because previously they were moved from their land in Iowa down to a reservation in Kansas.
Very good. How do you see rights and responsibilities playing out in the Meskwaki settlement story? Or are we still fleshing that out?
We're still trying to figure out a little bit, but definitely a year before they bought the land, there was a law passed that said that they are citizen, they are human, and then they can purchase land, which they did eventually a year later. And then they had the responsibility of purchasing that land to regain that area.
Mm-hmm. All right, definitely sounds like we're on the right track. Last question for you, Abby. Clearly, you have a history of exploring Iowa topics through your National History Day projects. Why do you think it's important to share Iowa stories?
Iowa stories, they kind of get overlooked a little bit because like there's more important topics that aren't specifically related to Iowa. And I feel that it's important to share Iowa history and how it has impacted the world.
I think we all here at the State Historical Society would agree. All right, Renee, I'm going to turn it to you. What kind of projects do you most enjoy judging at contests? Or what are some things you like about each kind of project that you get to look at?
Okay, so surprisingly, I never thought that I would enjoy papers as much as I do. But what I like about those is about judging papers is I get them 2 weeks ahead of time, so I can spend a lot of time. I spend a lot of time on every project that I judge because I feel like it is my opportunity to actually teach those students through my comments about how to become a better researcher and a better presenter. So what I usually judge is either papers, and if I judge at a contest, for instance, I'm getting ready to go to Chicago Metro to judge in a couple of weeks. I'll probably judge junior papers in the morning, and then in the afternoon, I'll judge performances or documentaries. And I also enjoy performances and documentaries as well. Exhibits are harder for me to judge, and websites I can do because I get a little bit more time, but my favorites are papers, documentaries, and performances.
Deb, do you have any favorite kinds of projects to judge?
You know, it's oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Renee.
I was just going to say, I'm thrilled to hear about Abby doing the Native American history projects. I really wish that we would see more Native American history projects. And I thought maybe at nationals, I would see more Native American history projects last year than I did. So anybody that's out there still looking for a topic, I would really encourage you to study Native American history because it's wonderful for us to be able to learn about that.
Abby, do you need to go to class? Okay. Off you go.
Thanks, Abby.
For me, I love the documentaries. I hope someday I will have a future Ken Burns that I can say I may have jump-started their career. Probably not going to happen, but I love documentaries. The one that causes me the most challenges as a teacher is the websites. Trying to balance visual images, audio resources, text, and working within the platform that we're required to use, which is fine. It's just that it's a lot. And if the kids are not, as I call techie inclined, that one can be a little bit more of a challenge. But I've, worked with kids with performances. All of them have their own unique little twist that you need to be aware of as you prepare those projects.
And additionally, the types of projects are all different in terms of how much cost it takes and how much technology that you need to have access to. Like for a website project, an advantage for groups is they can all work on it from home because they can just log into their website. Whereas if you do a group performance, you actually need to be together to work on that performance. Performances and exhibits, I think, take probably a little bit more financial investment in terms of costumes and props and those kinds of things. So those are also something to consider when you're choosing how you want to show you what you've learned.
I know one thing that we have done at Kern and AL is we recycle all of our exhibit boards. And so we use insulation foam because they're easy for the kids to lift. And so every year we peel off the stuff from the year before and decide, what they're going to use to cover that board to go with the theme for their project. So we have tried really hard to mitigate that expense when it comes to the exhibits and the performances. So we recycle and reuse a lot of stuff in the closet to try to help with that. I tell the kids that it does not need to be a advertising slick production. That's not the point. The point is the information and the analysis. And one year I judged at state and there were two projects side by side. One was the slick advertising production, and you could tell that a lot of money had been spent on that. And the one next to it was a very well done project, just not all the glitz. And after we visited with the students and we looked at the materials and we evaluated the exhibits, we decided to go with the one that wasn't as glitzy because the information was just much more solid and the analysis was much more solid. So I try to tell the kids spending a lot of money on an exhibit is not going to make your chances of moving on better. Does it need to be clean? Does it need to be neat? Does it need to be accurate? Yes. But we don't need to spend, tons of money on projects. So I don't know what other schools do, but we try to mitigate those expenses by recycling and reusing what we have.
Definitely lots of tricks that you learn year over year to keep things cost effective so that everybody can participate, because it's important that accessibility is a piece of the conversation in National History Day. All right, let's jump a little bit forward. Let's talk about contests in a little bit more detail. So I'll let you both kind of take a handle on it. If Deb, you want to talk about it from like a more teacher specific perspective, and Renee, if you want to talk about it from a judging perspective, what does contest day look like? What happens on contest day?
I usually have at least one meltdown and tears that we have to prop back up and support, but
No tears, no tears.
no tears. I will tell you that before we go to contest, we practice the interviews with the judges and go over lots of different kinds of questions that somebody from NHD in Iowa gave to me a very long time ago. And it's not that I'm trying to, I don't know, control the interview, because that doesn't happen. But I think the opportunities that the kids have to practice those answers and to think about those answers and how am I going to answer that really helps for contest day. And I make them do it as a large group so they hear everybody else's answers and then they look at them and go, wow, that was a really good answer. So then I say, well, how can you take what they said and make your answer better? So we prepare ahead of time for contest. Students set up their exhibits. We find contest rooms. We want to make sure that everybody is where they're supposed to be at least 15 minutes ahead of time. I go around and support all of the kids and make sure that they're where they need to be. I am lucky that we have a lot of parent involvement, so I make sure there's a parent with every student. And the morning is, I would say there's no doubt it's stressful for the kids, stressful for the teacher too, because you can't always be in that room with the paper interview, even though you might want to stick your ear to the door and make sure that, everything's going okay. But to watch the kids come out and say, I nailed it, whether they did or not, they felt like they did, is really important. And so I encourage the kids to support each other. And so if there's a performance or a documentary that they can go see, the kids will all go watch each other and cheer for each other. We have a lot of great team building on our kids from AL and Kern. They really go and support each other. And then I emphasize that it's one person's opinion on one day, and they have to remember that. And hopefully, if their project were to be judged the next day by a different set of people, the outcome would be the same. I would be lying if I say that happened all the time. It doesn't. But I encourage them to do the best job that they can. I celebrate with them. We have a huge party at school afterwards, after the day or whatever day after, because we're going to celebrate. And then if some don't move on, that's okay. And then we begin the process all over again for the state contest. So, it's a lot of preparation ahead of time. I really want my kids to go in and be prepared for anything. I sat in the back in Des Moines when my oldest daughter was presenting her documentary on the Oklahoma Land Run when it was geography and history. I don't know if Renee remembers that one. It's the only theme they only ever used once. And I'm sitting in the back and I don't remember what the question was, but all of a sudden out of her mouth came this eloquent answer that related to geography, and the tears rolled down my face. I went, oh my God, that's my kid up there. And I have cried with my own students as well. But just seeing them be able to articulate their projects is so rewarding. And they feel that way too, because they know when they've been able to share that on contest day. Okay, I'll be quiet. Renee, your turn.
I love hearing that story, Deb, because I can relate in a lot of ways. Contests are great, and the competition motivates students because there's some rewards at the end of it. For me, the learning and the important part of National History Day happens way before anybody ever gets on a bus or gets in a car to go to a contest. And I always stress that to my students. But from my viewpoint, as a judge, I feel like that talking to students at an interview is my opportunity to learn from them. And I want every student that leaves an interview with me to walk out the door and say, I nailed it. I did such a great job. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to be dishonest with them, but I want them to have a positive experience talking about their project to a person they've never met before. And I want students also to realize that when they come to these contests, that all the adults who are there are on their side. Yes, there's going to be competition, and there's going to be a first place and a second place, or some will move on and some won't. But all of the adults there are supportive of all the hard work that you've done and really proud of you for the learning that you've accomplished.
And I would also like to reiterate that and Renee would probably agree with me, that how you dress is important for History Day. So do you have to have the latest thing off the rack? No, but a nice pair of pants and a nice shirt will go a long way with a judge. At least it does with me, that they cared enough to dress. I call it business casual. One year, my son did a documentary on Jackie Robinson. I know, the infamous Jackie Robinson projects, but he and his partner had on a tie and a shirt and a pair of pants, and of course their tennis shoes. But a couple of the other groups were in shorts and t-shirts, and it just set the tone that maybe, and I'm not saying they did, but maybe they might have cared a little bit more about their presentation because they dressed for it. I have been known to go out and buy clothes for kids that didn't have them, or go through my kids' clothes when they were younger to find things that kids could use that maybe didn't have that opportunity. And so I think that whole 21st century skills through the interview is really important, and dressing for success is part of that.
I agree.
Yes, I think there are many things you can do to communicate to the judges how serious you are about kind of your success in National History Day. And I would just offer as a point of clarification for those who don't know, when students interview for their project, it's sort of like their 10 minutes of fame. They've worked for months and months and months on this project to get 10 minutes with a judge to kind of to answer some questions about the process and the project. But probably the more important takeaway at the end of the day is the feedback students receive at the end of a contest. So all judges provide written feedback for the students. And this will be our last question for the panel before I have a couple closing things to say. But for you two, how important is that feedback for students at the end of the day, whether or not they advance to the next level of competition?
I think it's crucial. As a judge, I want to make sure my feedback is clear. I always start with the most positive things that I can praise the student with every project, and I'm sure Renee is the same way. But what are you going to take from that experience, and how are you going to apply it? So for those that move on, how are you going to make things better? For those of you that didn't move on, how can you take what you've learned through the judges' comments and come back next year and do it again, or apply it to a class that you have in school? That feedback is so important, so that students know where they excelled and maybe where they needed to work on something, maybe just a little bit more. And it also helps explain why somebody didn't move on and somebody did. And so I think that feedback and that positive reinforcement with the judges, and then the things that they need to improve on, are just what the whole process is about.
I take my opportunity to help students learn about National History Day, take it very seriously, and I spend a lot of time writing, like Deb said, both positive comments and then um, ideas on how for them to improve. Because I know students, what they look forward to is those comments. And when in the olden days, when we had written sheets, students would save those forever and ever and look back at them every year because they worked really hard and it's really important to them what the judges say. So we as judges have a unique opportunity to help shape these students' education. And I know the students take the comments seriously, and it helps them in their schoolwork forever, all the things that they learn from a judge from National History Day.
Okay, I lied. I have one more question. And that is, so as true veterans of this program, years of your life spent dedicated to National History Day, why is this a program you continue to give back to into your retirement years when you should be doing any and everything else?
Well, I'll talk about the impact that it has on students. I am pretty sure that every student that I've ever worked with as a teacher and as a coordinator in Mississippi, they could think back and they could tell you what their topic was from the year they were a 10th grader or the year they were a 7th grader, because they are so invested in that project. And then the other thing is when I would have students go off to college, they would talk about how in their freshman college classes that the teacher would give an assignment and the students around them would just be falling apart, like, how in the world am I going to ever accomplish this? But the kids that have done History Day will say, I've done this before. I'm ready. I have 21st century skills. These are the things I know how to do. Plus, the national staff takes really good care of all of us, I think, and it's like a family. So it's been an honor for me to continue to give back to National History Day.
I'm just going to echo what Renee said. Watching the growth of my students, being able to see them come from point zero to wherever their journey ends has just been so rewarding for me as a person. And my family just calls me the crazy History Day lady. But all of my own kids participated, and two went to the national contest, and that achievement that I did it with the kids, whether their journey stops at the district contest or the state, just watching them grow and be able to become historians. I'm always pleased when I know the number of former students who are studying history in college or pursuing degrees in history. That always makes me feel really, really good that, we've done something right along the way. But I will agree with Renee. Lots of kids will come back and say, I don't know what I would have done without History Day that first year in college, because it saved me more than one time.
I will add my own anecdote. Well, I've only been involved with History Day since 2018, so a short amount of time comparatively. I have a friend who is a professor at Grinnell College, and she texted me a few weeks ago because she was reviewing scholarship applications to go study in the UK. And she said, I think I've read 7 applications that listed National History Day as an extracurricular activity in high school that changed everything about the way they saw the field of history and writing and critical thinking. And so even in the short time that I've been involved, I 100% agree. All right. Last piece from me. Thank you to our panel experts for your wisdom, your time, sharing your wealth of knowledge about National History Day with us today. But I would be remiss if I didn't make my last minute plug to please get involved and see for yourself how National History Day changes young people's lives right here in Iowa. As I mentioned, we are gearing up for our contest season. There are 9 regional contests that are in need of judges throughout the state. Their locations are listed here: Kalmar, Cedar Falls, Cedar Rapids, Council Bluffs, Davenport, Orange City, Ottumwa, Pella and Storm Lake, chances are you are within an hour's driving distance of one of those contests, and we would love to have you judge with us if you'd be willing to share a couple hours of your time. You do get training from me, so if you are interested but are not sure that you have what it takes, I promise you do, because I can teach you. I can teach you all the things you need to know as long as you have a passion for helping young people and learning from them as well. If you are a little bit closer to the metro, the state contest is also in need of judges. That's on Monday, April 28th up at Iowa State University. If you are interested in getting involved, please contact NHD in Iowa at nhd.iowa@iowa.gov. And without further ado, I will ask my colleague Rachel if we have any questions from the audience. But if not, it's been great sharing our time.
We have no questions from our audience. Thank you all for inspiring us. I am a first-time judge this year, and so Renee and Deb, I feel like I am well equipped to go into my first round of judging this year. So thank you so much, and to Abby, who had to run off to classes, for being here with us today, and to our National History Day coordinator, Hannah Howard. We hope that everyone will sign up for the Iowa History 101 webinars that take place on the second and fourth Thursdays throughout the year. There are many great stories to tell in the upcoming months. For more information and to register for future webinars in this series or to watch recordings, you can check out our website at history.iowa.gov. Looking to learn more Iowa history? You can find and watch over 90 recorded webinars of past 101 programs on the Iowa Culture YouTube channel. We look forward to virtually seeing you for the next Iowa History 101 webinar on February 27th. The topic will be Gwendolyn Wilson Fowler, a woman of distinction. Thank you all again for joining us today, and have a great afternoon.